I didn't know my life was about to fracture the moment I stood up from Daniel's parents' dining table. A second earlier, everyone had still been smiling. His mother refilling glasses, his father talking about family values like it was a sermon. Daniel sitting beside me with that practiced, easy confidence he used whenever people were watching. Then Daniel laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an awkward one. A clean, effortless laugh, like he'd just said something charming. If she asked, he said, tipping his chin toward the center of the table, as if he was sharing a harmless secret, I'd choose her, no question. His mother blinked. His father froze mid-chew, and I just stared at him because he didn't say it like a mistake. He said it like a truth he'd been rehearsing in his head for weeks. And tonight, under warm lights and polite conversation, he finally let it slip. I waited for the punchline, for the quick, I'm kidding, for his hand to squeeze mine under the table, for his eyes to soften and tell me I'd misunderstood. But Daniel didn't look at me. He looked pleased with himself. And I realized in the quietest, coldest way that I wasn't the person he was trying to impress anymore. His mother tried to patch it with a bright, brittle smile. Daniel, honey. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped the floor. That sound felt louder than anything else in the room. Where are you going? Daniel asked, finally turning toward me. His smile was already fading, replaced by confusion, as if I'd missed my cue in a performance he'd been directing. I didn't answer. I walked straight out, grabbed my jacket, and stepped into the November air. Are you seriously leaving? His voice followed me, sharper now, like I was overreacting to some harmless joke. I opened my car door. Cold wind hit my face. It wasn't a joke, I said, not even bothering to turn around. Then I drove home. 20 minutes. No speeding, no screaming, no shaking hands. Just a strange, brutal clarity, like someone had finally switched on a bright light in a room that had been dark for months, and suddenly I could see everything I'd been tripping over. The late nights, his phone always face down, the way he'd started dressing better for work, and coming home looking tired, different, satisfied in a way that had nothing to do with his job. I'd noticed it all. I'd just chosen to trust him anyway. That choice ended tonight. And when I pulled into the driveway and looked at the house, my house, the one I'd paid for, the one I'd built into a home, I understood exactly what I was going to do next. Not dramatic, not messy, just final. I'm 34 years old, an operations coordinator at a regional electrical supply company. Not glamorous, not flashy, but stable, honest work that keeps the lights on for half the county. I've always been the kind of woman who builds things quietly and takes pride in reliability. Daniel used to say that was what he loved about me. You're solid, he'd tell people. I never have to worry. We met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's housewarming party. I wasn't even supposed to go. I was exhausted from a double shift, hair pulled back, no makeup, wearing jeans that still smelled faintly like warehouse dust. Daniel noticed me anyway. He was charming in that understated way. Not loud, not cocky. He asked questions, listened, made me feel seen without trying too hard. We moved fast, but not recklessly. 2 years of dating before he proposed. A simple ring, a quiet yes. No grand gestures, just mutual agreement that we worked well together. And we did. For a while. We married 3 years ago. No kids, something we both said we wanted to wait on. Daniel focused on his career in corporate logistics. I focused on keeping our life running smoothly. Shared bills, shared routines, shared dinners that turned into comfortable silences. We bought the house shortly after the wedding. White siding, blue shutters, small porch I designed myself and spent weeks building the summer after we moved in. Daniel liked to joke that I was the practical one, so it made sense that the down payment came entirely from my savings, money I'd been setting aside since my 20s. His parents insisted the house stay in my name only, just in case, his father had said, smiling like it was a harmless formality. I hadn't questioned it then. In hindsight, I should have. The first year of marriage was easy, predictable, safe. The kind of life people envy from the outside. The second year, something shifted. Daniel started staying late at work, Conferences appeared on the calendar, weekends away in the city. His phone was suddenly private, always face down, always within reach. He started dressing better for work, new shirts, better shoes, cologne he claimed he'd always used. He came home tired, but not drained. There was a lightness to him that didn't involve me. I noticed. Of course I did. But I told myself I was being paranoid. That trust meant not interrogating every detail. That strong women didn't nag or snoop or assume the worst. His parents still adored me. Family dinners were frequent. His mother praised my cooking. His father asked about my job, my plans, my goals. I thought I was secure. What I didn't see, what I refused to see, were the small emotional withdrawals, the way Daniel stopped asking about my day, the way conversations became transactional, the way intimacy turned routine. I told myself marriages went through phases. I told myself love didn't always feel exciting. And I told myself over and over that choosing trust was better than choosing fear. That night at the dinner table proved how wrong I was. Because when Daniel joked, casually, publicly, that he'd choose another woman over his wife, it wasn't a slip. It was a confession. One he assumed I'd swallow, like I always had. He underestimated me. Looking back, the warning signs weren't subtle. They were just inconvenient. Daniel's schedule became unpredictable in a way that didn't invite questions. Working late again, team dinner, conference planning. The words were always reasonable on their own, stacked neatly into excuses that made sense if you didn't look too closely. I stopped looking closely because it was easier. At night, he'd sit beside me on the couch, scrolling on his phone, angling the screen away without realizing he was doing it. When I asked what he was reading, he'd answer too quickly. When I didn't ask, he seemed relieved. Our conversations changed texture. Less curiosity, more logistics. Did you pay the electric bill? What time are you working tomorrow? We're out of coffee. The warmth was still there, technically, but it was thinner, like a blanket that no longer reached your feet. His parents noticed nothing, or pretended not to. At Sunday dinners, his mother would squeeze my hand and say, "You're glowing." His father would toast to strong marriages built on trust. Daniel would smile, kiss my cheek, and keep his phone tucked face down beside his plate. I'd sit there feeling strangely alone, surrounded by people. Then there were the small moments that lingered longer than they should have. Once, I came home early from work with a migraine and found Daniel standing in the kitchen, laughing quietly into his phone. When he noticed me, he startled, actually startled, and ended the call too fast. "Work?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, "just work stuff." Another time, I noticed a name appear on his screen more than once when notifications popped up before he could turn the phone over. He told me it was someone from his department, nothing important. I didn't ask more. Because asking would mean admitting I was afraid of the answer. His friend group shifted too. Brianna, his best friend's wife, started acting strange around me. Overly nice, overly sympathetic, like someone who knew something they weren't supposed to know. "Men can be idiots," she said once, out of nowhere, when Daniel stepped away to take a call during dinner at our place. I laughed it off. But later, lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, the sentence replayed itself in my head. Why would she say that? The atmosphere between Daniel and me grew heavier without a single argument to explain it. No screaming matches, no accusations, just distance that widened quietly day by day. I started compensating, cooking more, initiating conversations, asking about his work, his stress, his goals. He'd answer politely, vaguely, then turn the focus back to something neutral. I felt like I was chasing a version of my husband who'd already stepped out of the room. Still, I stayed, because leaving without proof felt dramatic, because love meant patience, because marriage wasn't supposed to be abandoned just because things felt uncomfortable, and because I believed, foolishly, that honesty would eventually reappear if I gave it enough space. That dinner at his parents' house was supposed to be another performance of normalcy. Roast chicken, wine, familiar stories. Instead, it became the moment the mask slipped. Daniel didn't just humiliate me. He revealed that somewhere along the way, he'd already made a comparison in his head, and I'd lost. The drive home that night didn't make me angry. It made me alert. And for the first time in months, I stopped asking myself why he was acting differently and started accepting that he already belonged to a version of his life that didn't include me. The house looked exactly the same when I walked in that night. That was the strangest part. The shoes lined neatly by the door, Daniel's jacket still hanging on the coat rack, framed photos of us smiling on vacations, birthdays, holidays, evidence of a life that had already stopped being real without my permission. I didn't stand there staring, didn't let sentiment slow me down. I went straight to the garage. The cardboard boxes were stacked exactly where I'd left them from our last move. I pulled one out, then another. The sound of corrugated cardboard scraping concrete felt grounding, real. Something I could control. I carried the first box upstairs and went into the bedroom. Daniel's closet was on the right, mine on the left. I started with his. Not angrily, not dramatically, methodically. I took his shirts off the hangers one by one, folded them carefully, placed them in the box. Jeans, sweaters, the expensive cologne his sister had given him last Christmas. Shoes lined heel to toe. His watch case, his spare phone charger. I wasn't throwing anything. I wasn't shaking. I felt calm, too calm. Like my body had decided panic was a waste of energy. The bathroom came next. His razor, his aftershave. The electric toothbrush he'd insisted on buying in black instead of white because white gets gross. I wrapped everything in towels so nothing broke. Downstairs, the kitchen. His coffee mug from a conference in Chicago. The blender he'd used exactly twice and then declared, more trouble than it's worth. His protein powder. His vitamins. Every object told a small story, and every story ended the same way. This doesn't belong here anymore. Time disappeared. My phone buzzed somewhere behind me, but I didn't check it. I didn't need to know what he was saying. I already knew the shape of it. Confusion, then anger, then righteousness. I kept packing. By midnight, 8 boxes sat neatly stacked by the front door. Everything that was clearly, unquestionably Daniel's. I sat on the couch and finally looked at my phone. 17 missed calls, 12 messages. The most recent one read, "I'm coming home. We're going to talk about this like adults, whether you like it or not." I looked at the boxes. Then I stood up. In the garage, there was a small metal lockbox we kept for documents. I opened it, fingers steady, and pulled out the spare house key. I also pulled out the business card for the locksmith, the one who'd helped us when we first moved in. I called the number. A groggy voice answered on the 3rd ring. "I need the locks changed tonight," I said. "I'll pay double." He arrived 40 minutes later. While he worked, drilling and replacing, I carried the boxes outside one by one and set them on the porch. Neat, visible, unmistakable. The locksmith didn't ask questions, just glanced once at the boxes, then back at his work. "Domestic situation?" he said casually, handing me the new keys when he finished. "Something like that." "I've seen it plenty," he replied. "Good luck." He left. I locked the door with the new key and sat back down on the couch. And I waited. Daniel's car pulled into the driveway at 1:30 a.m. I heard the door slam, footsteps on the porch, the key scraping uselessly in the lock once, twice, 3 times. "What the hell?" His voice was sharp, confused. Then knocking, harder. "Open the door, right now." I didn't move. "I know you're in there." My phone lit up on the coffee table as he called me from outside. I let it ring until it stopped. "This is insane," he shouted through the door. "You can't lock me out of my own house." Our house, he'd called it just last week. But the deed had only my name on it, something his parents had insisted on, just in case. The knocking escalated, then stopped abruptly. I heard him pacing, then talking on the phone in a low, urgent voice. A few minutes later, footsteps down the stairs. A car door, the engine starting. He left. I sat alone in the dark living room, surrounded by the quiet of a life I'd paid for, built, and maintained. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I could breathe properly. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the pretending was finally over. I woke up on the couch at 6 a.m. with my neck stiff and my mouth dry, still wearing yesterday's clothes. For about 5 seconds, I honestly believed none of it had happened. Then I saw the empty space by the window, where Daniel's reading chair used to sit. The gap on the bookshelf where his books had been lined up in careless stacks. The silence felt different, heavier, permanent. Reality settled in without ceremony. I stood up slowly and went to the kitchen, made coffee, strong, black, the kind that tastes awful but forces your body to cooperate. While it brewed, I checked my phone. 32 notifications. Daniel, his mother, his father, Brianna. The messages followed a predictable arc. Confusion, anger, moral superiority. This is ridiculous. You're being childish. Let's talk like adults. Please call him. We can fix this. One message from his father stood out. Daughter, let's be reasonable here. Reasonable. I deleted every message without responding. Then I blocked every number. The coffee finished brewing. I poured a mug and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wood grain I'd refinished myself last year. 3 years of marriage, 5 years together, and it had ended with a sentence spoken casually over dinner. Or maybe it had ended long before that. That sentence was just when I finally stopped ignoring the truth. Around 8, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number, I answered without thinking. You can't just throw someone out of their home like this, Daniel said. He'd borrowed someone else's phone. I didn't throw you out, I replied calmly. You left. You changed the locks. My house. My locks. We're married, he snapped. That's not how this works legally. I took a slow breath. Tell me something. What? Who is she? Silence. The woman you'd choose over me, I continued. Who is she exactly? More silence. Longer this time. It doesn't matter, he said finally, his voice harder now. You completely overreacted to nothing. I'm reacting to exactly what you said. And what exactly is that? He demanded. That we're done. I hung up and blocked the number. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. What I felt wasn't rage. It was clarity, the kind that arrives after months of self-doubt, when you finally stop asking whether you're imagining things. Around 8:30, my friend Darius called. We'd known each other since high school, before marriages, before mortgages, before complicated lives. Brianna just called Veronica, he said. She's freaking out. What happened? She said something she couldn't take back, I answered. I left. Changed the locks. That's all? That's all. What did she say? I repeated Daniel's words exactly. There was a pause on the line. Damn, Darius said quietly. Yeah. You need anything? No, but thanks. He didn't push, didn't tell me to calm down or reconsider, just offered to be there. After we hung up, I spent the rest of the morning doing something that surprised even me. I documented everything. Screenshots, calendar entries, credit card statements, all the nights he'd claimed to be working late, the weekends away, restaurants I'd never been to with him. I wasn't planning revenge. I was preparing. My father used to say, measure twice, cut once. Same rule applied here. Around noon, another unknown number. Stop ignoring me, Daniel snapped. We need to figure this out like adults. There's nothing left to figure out. You can't end a 3-year marriage over one comment. Watch me. I have legal rights, he said sharply. You can't keep me from my own house. Call a lawyer, I replied evenly, if you think that's true. You're serious, he said, disbelief creeping in. Completely. I hung up and blocked the number. And that's when I realized something unsettling. I wasn't angry. I wasn't devastated. I felt focused, like I'd been walking through fog for months and someone had finally turned on a powerful fan. All the little moments I'd ignored rushed back with brutal clarity. The late nights, the emotional distance, the way I'd been shrinking myself to keep the peace. I wasn't crazy. I'd just been choosing not to see. I made myself lunch, a simple sandwich, sat at the same kitchen table and thought carefully about what came next. I could call a lawyer now, or I could wait. Let Daniel make the first move. See how desperate he got. My phone buzzed with a text from Darius. Veronica says her version of the story is wild. Just giving you a heads up. I didn't ask what Daniel was telling people. It didn't matter anymore. That chapter was already closing, and I was done defending myself to someone who'd already chosen someone else. The quiet didn't last. It never does. By late afternoon, the house felt too still, like it was holding its breath. I showered, changed into clean clothes, and stared at myself in the bathroom mirror longer than usual. Same woman, same tired eyes, but something had shifted behind them. Lighter. Sharper. I checked my phone once before leaving the house. Nothing new. I grabbed my keys and stepped outside. The 8 boxes were still on the porch, stacked neatly in the afternoon sun. Anyone walking by could see them. Anyone could guess what they meant. I left them there on purpose. At 7, I met Darius at McGinty's Tavern. Tuesday night, crowded but not chaotic, sports on every TV, the low hum of conversations layered over clinking glasses. "You look better than I expected," he said, when I slid into the booth across from him. "What were you expecting?" I asked. "I don't know. More wrecked." I smiled faintly. "Me too." The waitress, Julia, mid-40s, been there forever, brought us beers without asking. We drank in silence for a minute. "So," Darius said finally, "Veronica heard from Brianna." Of course she had. "He showed up at Brianna's place crying," he continued. "Said you went completely crazy. Locked him out for no reason." "No reason," I repeated. "That's the story." I took a slow sip of my beer. "Did she mention what she said at dinner?" Darius shrugged. "According to Brianna, it was just a joke, something you took the wrong way." "A joke," I echoed, staring at the phone. In front of her parents. He didn't argue. We watched the game for a bit, some team I didn't care about losing badly. My phone buzzed. Email notification from his parents' lawyer. I opened it right there at the table. Formal language. Requests for mediation. Property discussions. Carefully worded concern for emotional well-being. "They got a lawyer already," Darius muttered, reading over my shoulder. "Looks like it. You getting one?" "Soon," I said, just seeing how far they push first. Another buzz. Text message. Unknown number. "The boxes are gone." I stared at the screen. Another message followed almost immediately. "Someone took everything I own." I didn't respond. "Did you just smile?" Darius asked. "He says someone stole his stuff off my porch." He burst out laughing. "That's brutal." "I didn't steal anything," I said calmly. I packed it carefully and left it where she could get it. We ordered another round. Around 9, my phone rang again. This time, a familiar number. Her father. I hesitated, then answered. "Sir," I said evenly. "Daughter, we need to talk seriously about this situation. There's not much to talk about. She's devastated. You can't just do this." "She told me she'd choose another man over me," I replied. "You were sitting right there." Silence. "Did I misunderstand her?" I asked quietly. More silence. That's what I thought. I hung up. Darius stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You're ice cold," he said. "No," I corrected. "I'm finished." I drove home carefully. The porch was empty when I arrived. The boxes were gone, just like she'd said. I went inside, locked the door, and sat on the couch. Turned on the TV without really watching it. My phone buzzed again. "I need to come get my things from inside." "What things?" I typed, then deleted without sending. Another message appeared. My clothes, my stuff. That was all in the boxes. Someone stole them. Not my problem. I turned my phone off completely. The next morning, pounding jolted me awake. 7 a.m. I peeked through the window. Her. Brianna. And another woman I didn't recognize. "Open up," she shouted. "I know you're in there." I made coffee first. Let them pound. "This is harassment," she yelled. "I'm calling the police." I almost laughed. 20 minutes later, a cruiser pulled up. I opened the door before they knocked. 2 officers, one younger man, one older woman. Her name tag read Officer Brennan. "We got a call about a domestic situation," she said calmly. "No situation," I replied. "Just someone who doesn't live here, trying to come inside." "That's a lie," she snapped, stepping forward. "Ma'am, step back," Officer Brennan said firmly. "This is my house," she insisted. "Is your name on the deed?" the male officer, Officer Chen, asked. She hesitated. "We're married." "Actually," I said calmly, "the house is solely in my name, bought before the marriage." They asked for ID, utility bills, proof. I had everything. The deed sealed it. "Ma'am," Officer Brennan said gently, "we can't force entry if you're not listed on any legal documentation." "What about my things?" she cried. "I packed everything that was clearly his and left it on the porch yesterday," I said. "He texted me saying someone took it." She called me a liar. The officers didn't react. Eventually, they told her she'd need to pursue the matter legally. She stood on my lawn, sobbing, Brianna holding her shoulders. When they left, she looked straight at me. "This isn't over," she said venomously. "Yes," I replied. "It is." I closed the door. By Thursday afternoon, the story had spread everywhere. At work, my boss Mitchell called me into his office. "I don't do gossip," he said, closing the door. "But your husband came by earlier, caused a scene." "She won't be back," I said. "If he is, he'll be banned from company property." "Understood." "You need time off?" "No, work helps." He nodded, shook my hand, and let me go. Later that day, Darius called. "There's more," he said. "What kind of more?" "The woman. The one he'd choose." My grip tightened on the phone. "Name's Priscilla," Darius continued. "Works at his office." The conference. The late nights. Everything clicked. "They've been work friends for 6 months," he added, according to Brianna. I closed my eyes briefly. "Thanks for telling me." "Want me to dig?" "No." But it did matter. Not because I wanted him back, because I wanted the full truth. That evening, an envelope waited on my front door. Legal letterhead. Mediation request. Claims of shared property. Spousal support. Spousal support. I laughed out loud. We've been married 3 years. He worked full-time, made decent money. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. "I messed up," he said quietly. "I know that." I didn't answer. "Priscilla and I are just friends," he rushed on. "I was trying to make you jealous." "You done?" I asked finally. Silence. "Maybe I did mean it," he snapped suddenly. "Maybe I was tired of you taking me for granted." There it was. The truth. Finally. "So you found someone more exciting," I said. "She listened to me," he insisted. "She made me feel special." "And I didn't?" Silence. "You emotionally cheated for 6 months," I said calmly. "I didn't cheat," he protested weakly. "Then go be with her," I replied. "See how exciting that is." "She doesn't want a relationship," he whispered. I hung up. And for the first time, I didn't feel satisfaction, just relief. The house felt different that night. Not empty, just exposed. Every sound echoed. The refrigerator hum, the ticking clock above the stove, the soft creak of the floorboards when I walked from room to room, checking doors I already knew were locked. I sat at the kitchen table with the mediation letter spread in front of me, reading the same sentences over and over without absorbing them. Emotional distress. Shared marital assets. Spousal support. It was almost impressive how confidently they asked for things that had never belonged to them. Still, something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not all at once. It was the slow realization that the man I'd married had been living a parallel emotional life for months, while I'd been folding his laundry, planning dinners, believing in phases. I went to bed alone for the first time since everything exploded. Sleep didn't come easily. Every memory turned sharp in the dark. The way he'd smiled at his phone. The conferences he'd been too busy to call from. The way I'd adjusted myself, my expectations, my needs, so I wouldn't seem demanding. At some point, tears finally came. Quiet ones. The kind that don't feel dramatic or cleansing, just exhausting. I cried for the version of myself who'd believed love meant endurance, For the woman who'd trusted so completely, she'd dismissed her own instincts. For the years that suddenly felt wasted. Around 2 a.m, my phone buzzed. I knew it was him without looking. I didn't answer. Another buzz, then another. Finally, a voicemail notification. Against my better judgment, I listened. His voice was unsteady, slurred, not drunk, but emotional in that uncontrolled way that comes from panic. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now," he said. "Priscilla won't even answer my messages. She says I'm overreacting, that I made things complicated." I closed my eyes. Of course she did. "I ruined everything," he continued. "My marriage, my job. Everyone's looking at me like I'm the problem." "You are," I thought, but didn't say. "I know you think I don't deserve sympathy," he whispered, "but I'm completely alone." That was the sentence that hit hardest. Because part of me, the part that still remembered who he used to be to me, ached at the sound of it. I didn't call back, but I didn't delete the message either. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, wondering how love could dissolve so quietly, and how strength could feel so heavy. The next morning, I woke with a headache and a hollow ache in my chest. I went through the motions, showered, dressed, drove to work. At the warehouse, everything felt surreal. Forklifts beeping, inventory lists, normal life continuing as if my personal world hadn't imploded. Around mid-morning, my boss pulled me aside again. "He came back," he said gently. My stomach dropped. "He didn't get past reception," he added quickly, "but he was emotional." "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "Don't be," he replied. "This isn't on you." That small validation, unexpected and undeserved, nearly broke me. On my lunch break, I sat in my car and finally let myself feel the full weight of it. The betrayal, the humiliation, the exhaustion of being strong when all I wanted was to rest. For a brief, dangerous moment, I wondered if I'd been too harsh, if maybe locking him out, cutting contact, refusing to negotiate, if maybe that made me cruel. Then I remembered the dinner table, his smile, the certainty in his voice when he said he'd choose someone else, and I knew. That night, when I got home, I didn't turn on the TV. I sat on the floor of the living room, back against the couch, and let the quiet settle. This was the bottom. Not dramatic, not explosive. Just the point where there was nothing left to pretend about. I couldn't save the marriage. I couldn't fix his choices. And I couldn't keep setting myself on fire to keep someone else warm. For the first time since this began, I didn't think about what he wanted. I thought about what I needed. And in that stillness, raw, painful, honest, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't waiting for him to come back anymore. I was preparing to let him go completely. The shift didn't come with a dramatic moment. No slammed doors, no screaming revelations. It came quietly, on a Friday morning, with a cup of coffee going cold on my desk, and an email that changed everything. The subject line read, "About Daniel and Priscilla." I stared at it for a long second before opening it. "Hi. You probably don't remember me. We met briefly at your Christmas party 2 years ago. I work with Daniel. I don't usually get involved in other people's marriages, but I think you deserve to know the truth. They've been seeing each other since last spring. Not just emotionally. I'm sorry. Last spring. 8 months. Not 6, like Daniel had admitted. Not nothing physical, like he'd sworn. 8 months of deliberate choices. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I felt steady. I forwarded the email to myself, saved screenshots, and closed my laptop. That was it. No more gray areas. No more wondering if I'd overreacted. No more guilt for protecting myself. I called a divorce attorney that afternoon. Her name was Mrs. Kellerman, early 60s, sharp eyes. No tolerance for nonsense. She listened without interrupting as I laid everything out. Timeline, messages, the house, the locks, the police visit, the mediation letter. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. Not warmly, but confidently. "You're in a very strong position," she said. "Short marriage, no children, separate finances, house in your name. He works full-time." "What about spousal support?" I asked. Mrs. Kellerman snorted. A judge will laugh. What about emotional distress claims? Did you touch her? Threaten her? Destroy her property? No. You packed it carefully and left it outside. What happened after that isn't your responsibility. For the first time in days, my shoulders relaxed. She's going to escalate, Mrs. Kellerman continued calmly. They always do when they realize they're losing. Don't engage. Every message goes through me now. I nodded. On the way home, something unexpected happened. I felt light, not happy, not relieved, but unburdened. Like I'd finally put down a weight I'd been carrying without realizing how heavy it was. That evening, Daniel showed up again, alone this time. Sitting on my porch, jacket pulled tight around him, eyes hollow. I got the papers, he said, when I stepped out of my car. Good. I don't want a divorce. I unlocked the door. He grabbed my arm. Don't touch me, I said quietly. He let go instantly. Just talk to me, he pleaded. We can fix this. Therapy. Starting over. You had 8 months to choose me, I replied. You didn't. I was confused, he whispered. Priscilla didn't mean anything. You chose her at dinner. You chose her in secret. You chose her every day for 8 months. Tears spilled down his face. She doesn't want a relationship, he said finally. She never did. There it was. The truth he'd been avoiding. So now you want me back, I said evenly, because the fantasy collapsed. That's not... It is, I interrupted gently, and I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. I stepped inside. Please, he said, voice breaking, don't throw away our marriage. You already did, I said. You just didn't notice when. I closed the door and locked it. Inside, the house was quiet, not lonely. Mine. For the first time since that dinner, I didn't replay conversations or imagine alternate endings. I knew exactly who I was and exactly what I deserved. The turning point wasn't about power. It was, and once you have that real clarity, there's no going back. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It unraveled in stages, quiet at first, then publicly, then completely. Once Mrs. Kellerman sent the formal response to Daniel's lawyer, the tone changed immediately. No more polite mediation language. No more soft requests for mutual understanding. Just Daniel's parents called first. I didn't answer. Then I didn't respond. Then came the legal maneuvers, claims of shared assets, exaggerated accounts of emotional harm, thinly veiled threats meant to intimidate me into compromise. Mrs. Kellerman shut all of it down with surgical precision. Short marriage, no children. Both parties employed full-time. Property acquired before marriage, solely titled. Every argument they raised collapsed under basic scrutiny. Daniel didn't take it well. According to Darius, who heard it through Veronica, who heard it through Brianna, he spiraled. Missed deadlines at work, took unexplained sick days, started drinking more than usual. The confident man who'd smirked at the dinner table was gone. In his place was someone scrambling to regain control over a life that no longer revolved around him. Then the truth about Priscilla came out. Not from me, not from Daniel, from the office. Priscilla wasn't single. She was married. 3 kids, and Daniel hadn't been the only woman she'd been emotionally close to. Priscilla's husband showed up at the office one afternoon, loud, furious, armed with screenshots. HR got involved. Management panicked. The situation exploded. By the end of the week, everyone knew. Daniel stopped being a sympathetic figure overnight. The narrative shifted from wronged husband to man who gambled everything on a man who never intended to choose her. She stopped showing up to work shortly after, took a leave, then quietly resigned. Her friends distanced themselves. Brianna stopped calling. Invitations dried up. People don't like standing too close to fallout. Daniel's parents changed their tone, too. Less righteous, more resigned. His father called one last time. You're really not willing to reconsider? He asked. Tired now, not angry. No, I said calmly. A long pause. I wish things had gone differently. So do I replied honestly, but not enough to stay. We didn't speak again. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. No courtroom drama, no surprises. The judge barely looked up as he dismissed the spousal support request. "Both parties are self-sufficient," he said flatly. "This is a clean break." Daniel sat stiff beside me, jaw clenched, eyes hollow. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I walked out with exactly what I'd walked in with: my home, my career, my dignity. Life after didn't feel euphoric. It felt stable. Mitchell gave me a raise in February. Not out of pity, he made that clear, but because I'd earned it. 5 years of showing up, doing the work, being dependable. I repainted the bedroom the color I wanted. Deep blue. Calm. Grounded. Fixed the fence out back. Built new shelving in the garage. Small projects I'd been postponing for years because someone else's priorities always came first. The house finally felt like mine. One afternoon in March, I ran into Addison, the woman who'd emailed me the truth, at the grocery store. She looked relieved when she saw me. "I wasn't sure if I should have said anything," she admitted. "You did the right thing," I said, "when it mattered." She nodded. For what it's worth, nobody really talks to her anymore, after everything. I figured. I didn't feel triumph, just closure. That chapter had ended exactly the way it needed to. Not with revenge, but with consequences. Spring arrived quietly. No dramatic shift. No moment where everything suddenly felt perfect. Just longer days. Warmer air. And a gradual sense that my life was no longer something I had to brace myself against. I started running in the mornings. Nothing ambitious. A couple of miles before work. Headphones in, breath steady, letting my thoughts move at their own pace. It wasn't about fitness as much as ownership, about choosing how my day began. The house stayed clean, calm, mine. The walls where our photos once hung were empty, but they didn't feel lonely. They felt unfinished in a good way, like space waiting for something honest. One evening, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hi," she said softly. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything." I didn't rush to fill the silence. "I know it's too late," she continued. "I know you've moved on. I just needed you to know that I finally understand. It was my fault, not yours." "I hear you," I said calmly. "That's all?" "That's all." After a pause, she asked, "Are you happy?" I looked around my living room, at the quiet, at the solid, ordinary peace I'd rebuilt. "I'm getting there," I answered honestly. "I'm glad," she whispered. "You deserve that." "So do you," I replied. "But figure out what you want before you pull someone else down with you." He didn't argue. We hung up. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. A few weeks later, Darius invited me to a barbecue. Family, friends, nothing complicated. That's where I met Elias. Easy smile, warm laugh, no curiosity about my past unless I offered it myself. We talked. Then talked some more. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner into a movie. No games, no pressure. Just two people choosing to be present. One night, sitting on my porch as the sun dipped below the houses across the street, my phone buzzed. "Hope you're having a good night," Elias texted. I smiled and typed back. "Getting better, actually. You free this weekend?" "For you?" "Absolutely." I set the phone down and looked out at the street. At the house I'd built into a home. At the life I was shaping with intention instead of endurance. 3 years of marriage had ended, but I hadn't failed. I'd listened to my instincts, to my boundaries, to the quiet voice that told me I deserved honesty and respect. The lesson wasn't about walking away. It was about knowing when staying costs you yourself. And when that moment comes, you don't scream, you don't beg, you don't explain, you stand up. You choose yourself, and you don't look back.